Throughout World War II, there were many women who joined the fight to liberate their countries and nations from tough German occupations. Some joined the actual armed forces of their nations, such as the Red Army, and women became snipers and even skilled aviators who would bomb in their planes the formations of Wehrmacht soldiers. But many more joined the resistance groups such as the Partisans in Yugoslavia, and they would, if captured, be subjected to incredibly rough torture and then execution at the hands of the German forces. Inside of Italy, there was a civil war at the end of the conflict, as partisan forces battled fascists, and the partisans would even capture Benito Mussolini, the dictator of fascist Italy, and have him executed, and then his corpse posthumously displayed, being strung upside down. Inside of Italy, many women played a key role in the partisan movement and their fight against fascists, but if they were captured, they often faced torture and execution, and there were some cases of women being strung up from lampposts by the fascists. Today we look at the female Italian resistance fighters and consider their fates, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Inside of Italy, partisan women picked up arms and fought every day to support their companions, and they would transport resources and carry out many different roles as they were seen as less suspicious. There were groups of women who distributed anti-fascist propaganda, and they also raised funds and money for the partisan cause, but also to get their allies out of prison and maintain communication. But they also helped to get their allies out of prison and maintain communications. The women in the resistance also established first aid teams to help injured and sick people, and they contributed by collecting medicine, food and other resources, and they also helped deal with the dead, providing support to family members of partisans who had been killed. Inside of the partisan communities, women were very important. They knew how to handle weapons, and they were very valuable, but their actions were as risky as men, and they would be, if captured, subjected to terrifying torture. The women in the resistance had to deal with not just the German enemy, but also the fascist enemy, and there were accounts of terrifying torture which was being administered by both. Because of this, the female resistors had to camouflage and hide their weapons and ammunition, and if the Germans got suspicious of them whilst they were transporting things, they would say they were taking care of a family member who was sick. But there were many captured women who suffered the ultimate punishment. The fascists in 1944 photographed a suspected female resistance fighter who had been summarily executed. She had been, after her capture, strung up from a tree or a lamppost at the side of a road in Rome. What is shocking about this image is that she is wearing civilian clothes, and on her skirt there is a sign outlining what the woman was accused of. This woman was incredibly brave, and she was a member of the resistance, and had allegedly been involved in poisoning German soldiers. After her arrest she was beaten very badly, and along with her son she was taken to the seat of German command, and was tried and then hanged from a pylon by the Rome-Fughi tramline, in front of the gates of the Villa Igea Hotel. Angela Maria, it's believed this lady was called, was left strung up for 3 days, and her body was left as an example to those who lived in Rome, not to rise up and attempt an act of resistance against German forces. This was what female resistance members had to deal with, the threat and the posthumous display of their bodies, which was done to scare and deter other women. One of the most dangerous jobs, as mentioned, women got involved in with the resistance in Italy was that of a courier. Often teenagers were used, and they would arouse less suspicion and would not be subjected to searches. The staffette, as they were known, would be vital for connecting different resistance groups and also maintaining contact between partisans and their families. They also, in that role, nursed and kept contact with doctors to treat wounded partisans, and they were not armed, meaning that if they were captured, they would have no way of defending themselves. Stefanina Moro was a staffette, and she was roughly 17 years old when she was tortured to death by the Nazis. She served as a courier, and she was arrested in Asti, and was tortured by SS officer Friedrich Engel, who was known as the executioner of Genoa. She was brutalized and beaten very, very badly, so bad that the SS forces desperately tried to revive her after they accidentally tortured her to death. She had been transported to a hospital for medical officials to deal with her injuries, but she succumbed to her torture ordeal in hospital. Let's remember that she was just roughly 17 years old, when she was killed in this way by the German forces. These couriers, like Stefanina Moreau, were always on the front lines, and they were always in danger, and the couriers would first enter a village to see if there were any enemies to give the go-ahead for other partisans to then enter. After the war, many staffettes were awarded the Gold Medal of Military Valour for their bravery in the face of the enemy. One woman, Carla Capone, who was involved in the armed forces, was described as a young blonde who goes out at night to kill enemies, and she is always armed. She later killed a German soldier who was carrying plans involving the defence of her city, and she later claimed, "It was a traumatic experience. I was about to call him so he could turn round, but I knew he was armed. It seemed impossible that given my peaceful way of being contrary to all forms of violence, I would take a gun, point it, and shoot it in the back. I took his briefcase. I was in shock. I started running down the street, even holding the gun. It was raining and tears ran down my face. After the initial shock, and especially because our comrades were being arrested and tortured, all our scruples were replaced by firm determination to fight for our cause." But there were many women who specifically fought against the Nazis and Fascists, and the first detachment of female fighters came around in 1944, and specific groups of women formed different groups. Some were even chosen as team leaders, who would direct entire brigades of forces, including men, and it was a time in which brave action was deemed as a necessity. Of the women in the resistance, 623 of them at least were killed in battle, or were executed after being captured by German or fascist forces. 4,653 of them were also arrested and tortured, and 2,750 of these women were also deported to Germany. If this took place, then they sometimes would never come back, being sent to a concentration or extermination centre, and some were even executed inside of Nazi prisons using the German guillotine. Throughout World War II, many female resistance fighters in Italy gave their lives for the cause of liberating the country from fascism and the Nazis. They would succeed in doing this, but if captured, the women often faced incredibly barbaric and brutal fates. Some were strung up and hung in public, others were shot instantly after their capture, but others were subjected to terrifying torture ordeals, which also led to their deaths. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.